Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Ground Chuck, Charlie's Coaching Corner. And that song in the background is very fitting for what we're going to discuss tonight. And if my math is correct, I think yesterday was the 35th anniversary of when Derby won the state title against Housatonic Valley Regional in 1990. I think it was December 1st. And we're going to talk all about that team tonight. We took a poll, and that's the team that won, and it's going to be a lot of fun. That was a very special team. They really were, and I'm honored to talk about it tonight with tonight's guest, and I just think it's going to be just a great time. We're going to have a lot of fun, and he's with us right now, and that, of course, is Coach Charlie DeCenzo. And, Coach, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for coming on again.
Thank you, Mike, for having me.
Yeah, so, Coach, what I wanted to ask you is going into that season, I think a lot of people thought that Derby, might go 6-4, 7-3, but I know they definitely did not tap Derby to be, a state championship contender. That's for sure.
Yeah, we never looked at it in terms of state championships anyway going into the season. Our goal was always to try to win the Hoosie, and we always felt if we were able to do that, a lot of other good things would come with it. And going in, we had lost a good number of kids from the year before. We knew we had a nice backfield coming back. I had a lot of faith in Joe Martin, the quarterback. I was very concerned with our up front, our linemen, and I was concerned with our linebackers because we lost all of them from the previous year. So we knew a lot of young kids had to step in and do a good job, kids that had not gotten a lot of work the year before. And so we went in with, a very positive attitude. We thought we could have a competitive team, certainly. But we never expected this.
Right. And, Coach, correct me if I'm wrong, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but you always had the mindset that you just wanted to keep your head above water. While a lot of teams dream about state championships, that was never always a goal for you personally. You just wanted the program to continue to be successful and have a winning season. That was always kind of the goal for Derby, correct?
Yeah. I mean, first, we was always having, number one, a winning season. Number two, the Hoosie championship. And then after that, whatever came. I mean, one of our best years or one of our best teams, I think it was 1987. We never made it to the playoffs. We're 9-1, and we didn't have enough points. So, but that team is right there with any other team that we've had. So that was never our goal. I was not disappointed that year either. After beating Shelton that Thanksgiving Day when Pettinella had his great game, you almost didn't want to go back on the field.
Yeah.
You couldn't top it. So, but in retrospect, no, our goal was always to try to win the Hoosie and then go from there.
Right. And, Coach, obviously, you had talked about Joe. He was going to be your quarterback, and he didn't really have a lot of experience at the varsity level, but he did play defense at the varsity level for 2 years. But you had the two big backs, Palmieri and Ann Roman. So you had, the two skilled positions coming back, but a very new line. You had Doug Seibart, who found his way into the starting lineup, that season. Rob Hyder. Obviously, Dave Chevrolet was a returning starter.
Right.
And I think you had Sean Wandell as the tight end, and you had Pat McMahon, and I want to say, who was the other guard? Was it Carl Salisbury? I
Dave
forget.
Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Sorry, you mentioned Carl, yeah.
Yeah. So, but a lot of the line was relatively new. So that's never easy either because they didn't have a lot of varsity experience. So what did you think? I mean, was that like a concern early on, or did you figure, once they got some scrimmages, they would be okay?
No, it was definitely a concern. And we're also, of course, concerned with backups, in other words, you're not going to get through Jeff Sullivan. I don't think we mentioned Jeff before. You're not going to get through the entire year without losing a lineman here and there, so we had to get a few other kids like Keith Robinson and Ralph Cavallero, and you mentioned Salisbury, ready to play as well. But that was one of our main concerns going into the year. our starting offensive line and the depth to get through the entire year.
Right. And then I look at the wingback position, because you had two new starters there that they kind of rotated together. That was Rich Scaife and Mike Smith-Tana, and they both contributed to that team. But again, when it's somebody that's not had varsity experience, you don't know what to expect from them, and anything that you get is definitely a bonus. And those two guys really stepped up that year as well.
Right. And both of them, we always call them program kids. I mean, they came for 3 years, and they worked hard, and they worked on their skills, and certainly reached the level of efficiency that they were pluses on the team and on the field. And in the state championship game, Rich Scaife got a touchdown, which I was happy about, and Mike Smith-Tana, he caught a couple of touchdown passes in the course of the year too, as well. And you didn't, again, I mean, that was. I think when you look at this team, I mean, that was one of the things that I think we've always talked about. It was a team effort. Yes, we had 3 or 4 really outstanding kids, our running backs and our quarterback, et cetera. But other than that, it was a team effort. I mean, everybody contributed. They worked hard all week. I always appreciated the fact that, like, Johnny and Jason never worried about who was getting more carries or who scored more touchdowns or whatever the case might be. There was no jealousy. There was no envy. They just all pulled together. And that, I think, is what made the year as successful as it was.
Right. And Coach, one of the big positions that you had to fill, you had a great kicker in Steve Bizzato. He was a great kicker for you for 2 years. But this kid, Marco Brito, comes in, and boy, I'll tell you, Marco, he was tremendous. I think people forget how good of a kicker he was. And if I remember, he was All Valley 2 years in a row. Just, he really filled that void right away. And it's never easy, because Steve Bizzato, I think at one time had the Derby record for extra points. And then you get Marco, and Marco did a lot that year. He contributed a lot, even on the kickoff team as well, making some great tackles as well.
Plus, he filled in a little bit at linebacker too when we needed when we needed him, and that was very important for us. And as you said, it was just another example of complementary football. Everybody contributed.
Right, exactly. So, Coach, how did you feel about the preseason, the scrimmages? I mean, I do believe you guys won all your scrimmages, played well, and that's the time too where you can make the mistakes, and it doesn't count in the record books. So, I mean, did you like what you saw in the preseason? Did you think there could be something special with these guys?
Well, we did, but we also saw some flaws. Defensively, I think in a couple of the scrimmages, we couldn't get off the field sometime. We're allowing teams to drive on us or make big play, 3rd and 12, and get the first down, that type of thing. So we knew we had some work to do. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if the year before we played, we were typically a 4-4 team, but this particular year we went to a 50 front. I don't remember if the year before we did this, if it was a carryover, but it was just something that had to be perfected, had to be worked on. The one strong point we had though was our secondary. Frank Allo did a tremendous job with the kids always, but in this particular case, we had some exceptional athletes back there as well.
Right. And the thing too about the defense, Coach, and we'll get into some of the games obviously, but your defense, again, there were times where teams drove the ball on them, scored a touchdown here and there, but that defense never really broke. They figured out a way each game to come up with the big play when they needed to. And one kid in particular that, to me, he was the most underrated linebacker I think I ever saw at Derby, and that was Mike Harkin, because for a kid who weighed 145 pounds, he played like he weighed 245 pounds.
And he played half the year with a cast on.
Yeah.
He played with a club, Mike did it. Mike did a tremendous job, and he was undersized, and he wasn't the fastest kid in the world, but boy, he came and he he learned his position, and he operated almost flawlessly. If anything, once in a while Mike would get overpowered, but when you're 145 pounds playing inside, that's going to happen to you. But he was tremendous. That's what I'm saying. Kids like Mike, Carl Salisbury, again, another undersized kid who played a lot of linebacker for us. They just filled that void that we needed, and they did it well. And over the course of the year, got better and better and better, and adding to our efficiency on both offense and defense.
Right. And Coach, a lot of times when teams win championships, a lot of unselfishness has to happen. And I think about a lot of the seniors, because you had about 22 seniors.
We did.
I might be a little off there, and not all of them found their way into the starting lineup, but yet they all contributed, whether it was in practice, special teams, whenever they were asked to, and they never complained. I think of kids like Rob Piccirillo, Brian Piccolo, Lucio Mendez. There's probably some kids I'm missing as well, Scott Marcuccio. And yet these guys did whatever you coaches asked of them. And that's important too, because you have to be on the same page. The team has to come together as a team. And I really just always admired those seniors because they did whatever you guys asked of them.
Absolutely. The big thing for coaches, you've got to give your team a good look during the week, and, those kids helped us give our offense a good look at the other team's defense and give our defense a good look at their offense. So that when you got in the game, you weren't totally surprised at what you saw. I mean, sometimes, when you can't get that good look, then you get in the game and the game is so much faster, when you start making mistakes, you're missing tackles, and before you know it, you're in trouble. But I always refer to, a lot of those as program players, and I don't mean that derogatorily at all. I mean, I admire those kids. I mean, like you say, they come to practice every day, and they work hard. And that's why, we, coming from Coach Lou, when we had the opportunity, we wanted those kids in the game. If we had a lead in the fourth quarter, I would rather they go in and the final score is 6 or 7 points, different than it would have been. I don't care. I want those kids to get some time. And the same thing, as you said, we always used to try to put them on special teams too.
Right, definitely. And, the cool thing about being a Derby football player back then for those kids is the support they got. And I always think of those Sparrows. Those guys were such great guys. They would cook for the kids. They would do so many things for them. I think of Mickey Ruggiero, Danny DeGennaro, Ed Reganey. Just those guys loved that program so much. They loved watching those kids play. And I really felt like, they made those kids feel like rock stars back then. And the support they gave them was just tremendous.
No, I agree. We were always very fortunate in Derby. We had always had support from the community. That championship game down at Southern, I think half the town was there. I mean, we had a tremendous crowd there, and it's nice to see at practice every day. Those guys would be there and sit on that pole and watch practice, and when Lou dubbed them the Sparrows, but it was heartwarming. Uncle Bob, years ago, Uncle Bob was one that used to bring us a bushel of apples at the end of practice when the kids were walking off the field. They'd all grab an apple, But it was always great, and we always had tremendous support in town.
Right. So let's start with week one, Coach. Brantford had beat you the previous season up in Brantford. And one thing I always remember about Brantford, whether they had a good team or not, they were a very physical football team all the time. I mean, they always were physical. So you never could take them for granted. And early on, you guys scored a touchdown. You're up 7-0. But I believe at the half, it was only 7-0.
I think so.
And the thing that I like what I saw the most, though, was they were driving a little bit on the defense, but the defense came up with plays when they needed to. And again, they didn't break. But after that first game, I believe you guys won 21-0. Did you feel good about where the team was going? Did you have a sense that, they could grind out wins?
Yeah, we did. we were very pleased with our defense, of course, because going in, that was the concern, one of the biggest concerns we had. And when you can shut a team out, that gives you a little bit of confidence. And I think it gave the kids some confidence, in what they were doing, and, with the schemes we were using and things of that nature. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, Joe Martin had a couple of big long runs in that game, off of a belly option or something, and he had a long run early in the game. But anytime you can shut a team out, it does a lot to bolster your courage, if you will, for the next game.
Right. And what the other thing that was a positive sign was, again, the line did a great job that night blocking. And I think that was important for you because you had a new line for the most part, a couple of returners, but you had to see how they were going to do. And it seemed like every kid was blocking to the whistle that night. And that's the one thing I noticed early on about this team is they would do everything. Like they would block to the whistle, do everything they could. If, you're not always going to, on every play, come up big, but they would do what the coaches asked them to do. And that first game was definitely a great sign of things to come.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. The kids had a tremendous will to succeed and a tremendous will to win. We saw it in practice every day, and then again you would see it in the games themselves. And even when things were not going well, and there were a few games that they were not, they persevered. They never gave up. They always stuck to their roles and worked very hard to win.
Right. So, Coach, the Seymour game, and interestingly enough, that was a great Seymour football team.
It was.
They dominated everybody that year except for Derby. I mean, I know they had a late loss to Naugatuck and Amity, but for the most part, they were a powerhouse team. And I remember the game was rained out. You guys had to play it on a Sunday. But right from the get-go, I mean, you got a big defensive stop, which I thought was important. And then, first series, you guys score a touchdown. I mean, it was 26-0 at the half, which stunned me that, you could come up to the Barber Field and do that. But that team, again, I mean, making big plays. I remember Scott Ezzo caught a big pass late in the second quarter that set up a touchdown. Everything that you asked these players to do, they did.
No, and none of us expected that. We were going up to play Seymour. We expected a typical Valley dogfight. And, Scott, Mike, sometimes you get in a game and whether it's positive or negative, things just start to roll. And in our case, I mean, Seymour in that particular game might have had 4 or 5 turnovers. They just had a tough day of execution. I mean, partly we might have been responsible for a little of that, but I think, a couple of things happened. They got behind. They started throwing a few passes. We picked them off. And on the other hand, we were fortunate enough to break a couple of long touchdowns and a score just before the half to make it a little out of control, But certainly not what we expected. We don't usually go up to Seymour and have that kind of game.
No, and I mean that really was like just so surprising because even when Seymour doesn't have the best team in the world, they give Derby a tough game. Derby to them is their big game. Like they treat it as their big game. And to go up there, because the year before it was a dogfight, it was a 16-15 game. And this was a better Seymour team. So, I mean, that really was a credit to your team. And Jason and Johnny both had big games that day.
Well. And I think that was the game where we kind of said, we put a mark in the ground and said, okay, we can be this good. We just have to keep working. And I think that's where I think a lot of the kids and the coaches are also kind of came to the realization that, if we keep our head on straight and we continue to work hard, we could have something special here.
Right. And talk about game after game, dogfight after dogfight. That game in North Haven the following week on a Saturday night. I mean, that I never saw a place as rowdy as I saw that night. I mean, I was kind of scared to leave that night, but North Haven, you guys had that 25, I think it was 25 years at that point you had beaten them in a row, and they were ready for that game. They wanted that game, And boy, I'll tell you, it was a defensive game for most of the game. But again, you guys pull it out. And there's a funny story about that overtime game, which I know you like telling. So talk about that North Haven game a little bit.
Well, I mean, you're right. The atmosphere that night was electric. I mean, it was crazy. And don't forget, that came after the year before they came to Derby. They were 8-0 or something. And we were not having the greatest of years. And we beat them. And going down there, I mean, they were ready for bear. I mean, they were set. This was going to be the year. We had trouble to get into the stadium. You had to walk by the North Haven bleachers, and we had trouble there with people throwing stuff at us and whatever. As a matter of fact, it got so hectic toward the end of the game. Tommy D'Onofrio, Coach Tommy, he walked over because he's a policeman as well. He walked over to the North Haven policeman that was on our side and said, "Listen, you better get some more people here." And they did. And we had to get escorted off the field in the end when the game was over because it was hectic. And of course, we went to overtime, and that added to it. The overtime period was crazy because we ended up 7-7, and we're going to go to overtime. And of course, at the time, when the kids heard overtime, they thought of the NFL where it's sudden death.
Yeah.
So in high school, it's not sudden death. At the time, we're using the Kansas City tiebreaker, which meant both teams got the ball regardless if the first team scored or didn't score. So the official comes over and says, "Coach, we're going to have a coin toss, see what we want here." And I had David and help me out here. Oh, well. We were together, and I said, "Listen, if we win the toss, we're going to go on defense." And like the team erupted. "No, Coach, what are you doing? You can't do that." I said, "Joe, if we win the toss, we're going to go on defense." And again, I said, "All right, hold. Chevy, come here." And I grabbed Chevy by his shirt. I said, "No one talks out in that field but you. And you look me right in the eye. When we win if we win the toss, we go on defense. Do you have me?" "Yes, Coach." So Chevy was the one who called. We deferred, went on defense, which helps you in that situation because, as happened, we held them, and on fourth down they kicked the field goal, but then we get the ball. That's what the kids didn't quite understand at the time, and the overtime period was crazy because North Haven had some big linemen. They had this Max Joyner Brown, who was a great player, and Bob DeMeo chose to throw the ball, and they completed the first pass, but it was for about 5 yards, and we came up and we tackled. No, I'm sorry. The first play they dropped. The second one they threw a pass they completed. We came up and tackled them. The third play, it looked like it was going to be a touchdown, and Johnny and Roman came out of nowhere and tipped the ball, and then they kicked the field goal. So then we brought the kids to the sideline, and then you got to make some decisions, But I just thought they were set up for our bootleg play, and I said to Joe Martin, I said, "Joe, you either if Scott's either wide open, you hit him for the touchdown, or you run the ball. There's no throwing the guy open in this case. We're not taking any chances on this." And he came out, and Scott made ran a great route. He was open. He caught it in the corner in the end zone, and that's how we won that game in overtime.
Yeah, and Coach, I mean, what a nerve-wracking game. And I mean, getting off that field had to be difficult because, the North Haven players, like I remember a couple of them threw their helmets, which is a high school no-no, like for teams.
Yeah.
And that's how devastated they were. And I mean, to come out of there that night, I mean, what was it, satisfying or more relief than anything else?
Oh, it was exhilarating, first of all. I mean, John D and I were walking off, and he looked at me, and I looked at him. he said, D, how do we win this game? And but no, it was actually frenetic at the end of that game. I mean, the people were all over the place. We were celebrating. What we had to finally do is pull our team back to our sideline and wait. And a couple of policemen stayed with us, and we kind of let everybody get in their cars and go home. And then we got in the bus and we left. It was a little crazy.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I think that was the defense's greatest performance that night because let's be honest. I mean, and coach, I'm going to switch gears for a second because I got a surprise for you. And I know you know this guy, but this is the one and only, a great referee for many years, Mr. Billy Riccio. And Billy, thank you for coming on. It's a real honor today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Bill, how
Coach,
are you?
how are you?
Good. How you been?
Not too bad for an old guy.
Yeah, me too.
So, Billy, I wanted you to come on because you reffed a lot of Charlie's games over the years. And, Charlie
both
respected you. Yep. Charlie respected you. But let me ask you, being a referee and you referee different games like that, sometimes coaches, players, they're going to get animated during the course of the game. What is the biggest secret to being a good referee and staying in control when, you do have calls that you make sometimes that they may not always agree with?
Knowing sometimes when they're actually yelling through you, not at you. A lot of times coaches will yell, and really what they're trying to do is they're talking to their players through you. And a lot of times you pick that up by what they say. Sometimes they're mad at you. I mean, there's no question about it. But a lot of times it's frustration if something's not going right. And every game has the ebb and the flow where things go right and things go wrong. And a lot of times the key for most officials is knowing when they're yelling at you or when they're yelling through you.
Right. And and I think the big thing is too, Billy, is trying not to take it personal, not take it personally that when a coach is upset or a player's upset, it's the heat of battle sometimes. And I mean, would you get your team together and always kind of tell them that, listen, we don't want to make it about us. We're here to ref the game. Like, did you have that attitude with them that we got to make sure that we're doing what we need to?
We have pregame conferences in football, so we get there an hour and a half ahead of time, and we have to talk about different things. And usually, we talk about the two teams that we're officiating that night. And one of the last things I always said in my pregame conference was, "Just remember, guys, they didn't pay to see us." Yeah. And so what you do is you go out there and you try to do the best job you can. And it's a learning process. When you're a young official. You think you have to show yourself by throwing flags. You learn very quickly, or you should learn very quickly, that the flag is the court of last appeal. That a lot can be done by using your mouth and your voice. I remember doing a game at Southern Connecticut, and I saw a kid. I can remember his number 14. He was going to block a kid in the back, and I saw he was running. He was swimming upstream, and I just said, "Number 14, don't do it," and he kind of held back. and if you can, but that comes with experience. You have to know what to do and when to do it.
Right. And Billy, like I said, you refereed a number of Charlie's games, and like anything else, there's always going to be days where you both don't agree with stuff. But one game that I really thought was, impressive by both of you is Charlie got a little upset on Amity had run some type of pattern where they put an illegal receiver out there, and Charlie was hot. He was upset, and you were trying to calm him down, but he was, very upset over that call. And you two are kind of going back and forth. But what stood out to me the most is, I'll never forget, as Charlie's coming back in the second half, he pats you on the back, and he kind of gave you that pat on the back, like, listen, no hard feelings. It's in the battle of competition. Just talk about, reffing some of Charlie's games and what it was like to, deal with him as a coach on a regular basis.
Boy, I don't know if Charlie remembers, but we actually met each other in Yale Bowl.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. When the Giants were playing, yes.
And when the Giants were playing at Yale Bowl, and we
Yes.
had seats next to each other.
Yes.
Sometimes we were the only people in the end zone. But yeah, that I met him, and that was the first year I got on the New Haven board. And of course, he was with Coach DiFilippo at that time, and so the talk was mostly about football, in one way or another. But Charlie and I, we kind of went up the ranks together. He became a head coach. I became a referee with a crew, and we we had a simpatico because I always respected for him for what he did and how he did it, and I always hoped, and I think he understood what I was doing and how I was doing it. I tried not to be confrontational. There were times I I was, to my detriment. But as you get older, you back off a little bit, and you understand again that certain coaches, if they're yelling at you, they have a point, and you better find out just what's going on. Because just because I'm the referee, I'm the white hat, I have to take um, all the complaints. But then I have to go into the locker room at half and say to the guys, "Hey guys, we got to look at this. Uh, he's talking about an ineligible receiver. What are we doing wrong, or what aren't we looking at that maybe we ought to be looking at?" And we got it straightened out. Luckily, I remember that game.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, but that's what I really respected about both of you is you had the argument, you come back in the second half, and you move on, and it's forgotten. And that's the respect you both had for each other. And Billy, just tell me what Charlie meant to the game of football, because you told me off air a couple of times you won't find a better human being. So tell me what he meant to the game of football.
I think. See, I even broke my own rule tonight. I usually never called a coach by his first name. I never did it in football, and I don't do it in baseball. And the reason is they earn the name coach. And there was also a practical reason. I didn't want to say the wrong name in the heat of battle either. But also I always thought that by calling them coach, I'm giving them a respect. All right. And Charlie coach was part of that Derby tradition where he was a teaching coach. He taught the game. Coach may agree with me. I don't see a lot of teaching coaches out there anymore. I see a lot of coaches that like the X's and the O's, but I don't think the fundamentals are where they were 30 years ago. And it's probably because the game has changed so much, and they try to put safety in the game. So it's different, but coach meant a lot to the game because of what he did and how he did it. He taught the game. He taught the principles of the game, and in that way, he also imparted to his youngsters the importance of the detail. And that's something that's getting lost in today's world. And I always respected him for that. I always respect any coach that does that. But what I remember mostly about Coach is that he taught the little things, and that stuck with his players.
Right. And Charlie, Billy did a number of your games. I mean, how important was he to high school football? Because again, you have to have good officials out there who are doing it the right way. They don't have an agenda. They're just going out there to call a football game. And he always did it right time and time again.
No, from the coach's point of view, you're getting ready for the game, and here come the officials. But when Billy and his crew came on, you felt good because you knew you were going to get a good game. And you knew it wasn't going to be any controversy about rules. And what Billy was the interpreter. He knew the rules inside out and upside down, So you knew that the game was going to be officiated and controlled, which is important, that the officials, they control the game, because we're not going to let little things slide. And then all of a sudden we have a big problem in the fourth quarter. Billy and his crew always kept the game, run smoothly without any problems. And again, when Billy walked down the field and his crew walked down the field, you felt good. You said, okay, we don't have to worry. The officiating is going to be okay. We don't have to worry about that. And, that's a tough job. Being an official is a tough job. There's 4 guys covering the whole field. The game progressed. It wasn't the football games in the 1950s. The formations, the motions, and all kinds of things happen. But that's a tough job. And now, unfortunately, it's gotten so bad that you can't find officials because they put up with so much nonsense from the stands. It's terrible. You see these things. I mean, you shake your head and say, where are we going? This is high school football or high school sports.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, Billy, I want to thank you for giving us a few minutes. I thought it was important to have you and Coach kind of have a little mini reunion, but thank you for taking the time to do this. And thank you for everything you did for high school football that you're still doing today. I know you kind of oversee the officials nowadays. So thank you for everything you do.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Thanks,
have a great holiday season. Mike, have a great holiday season. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate it. And Coach, we're not done because we got another guest. He's coming on right now, and he was one of your players on that 90 team.
Hey, Rob.
And
hi, Coach. How are you?
Good, Rob.
He knows full well the impact you had to him and so many of his teammates. So Rob Hyder is going to join us. He was the center on the 1990 team, number 63. And Rob, thank you for giving us a few minutes today. I really appreciate it. I was going to ask Coach this soon, but I'm going to ask you this first. When you're going through this season, Rob, and you're having all these special moments and things like that, though, it's a grind, and that you're only as good as your next game. Was it hard sometimes to enjoy that season because you're thinking about what's next week? I mean, if you beat a team like Cheshire, which you did 28-21, were you able to enjoy it, or was there a part of you that was saying, we got to complete what we're trying to do here?
Well, I think going into the season, we played Brantford in our opening game at home, and we beat them 21-0. And if I recall correctly, Coach, Brantford had beaten us the year before. So that was a special game to win opening the season. And then, we went on to play Seymour, and we had a heck of a game that day. We put up 33 points. I want to say there was maybe 27 points at the half. So, and then by week 3, when we played North Haven, we knew we were in for a battle, and we went into overtime with them, and we ended up winning that game as well, obviously. But I think once we beat North Haven, we started to think, all right, we got something special brewing here. So that was where, I don't want to say we started focusing because we were focused right from the get-go, but I think we knew that we were on the cusp of something special after winning those first 3 games.
Right. And Rob, one of the things I brought up to Coach was the unselfishness by all the seniors on that team. Because, again, some of the seniors didn't start, but they did the little things they needed to do. They were unselfish. They would help out in practice whenever they needed to. And they were ready if they were called upon in the game. And Coach always did a good job of getting them in on special teams and things like that. But really, if you don't have an unselfish group like that, this championship doesn't happen.
Sure, agreed. We had 24 seniors that year, which is almost unheard of. I think Derby fielded 26 players this year, so to have 24 seniors on your roster was special. And like you said, a lot of them didn't start or didn't get a lot of playing time, but the work that they put in leading up to the games on Friday nights or Saturday mornings meant a lot to the entire team and to the progression of our season.
Right. And since I have you both here, one game I wanted to talk about, because I really felt it was a turning point. And the reason I say that is, yes, you came out of that game, it was scary, but you came out with a 21-7 victory. And I'm going to tell you right now, you needed to have a game like that where you played not your best football, but you still won, because I think it humbled a lot of the team that night, and it carried through the rest of the way. Talk about the East Haven game. Now, John D always says this, but sometimes, he gets the years wrong, but he always told me that Coach kind of went a little easy on you guys that weekend, kind of let you in shorts and shoulder pads instead of full pads. Was that the case? And talk about what that week was like you both could comment on this.
Good, Rob, you first.
I don't ever remember you going easy on us, Coach. So, so I don't recall. I do remember that game specifically, though. It was a cold, rainy night. It was very damp. And I do remember mostly about that game was the bus ride home. You know, like you said, we won 21-7, but you know, if you were on that bus, you would think we would have lost that game.
Mm. Well, I always felt in my mind, you know, we shortened practice a little bit. I was looking for a respite, you know, just a little bit, because you saw the gauntlet we had to deal with, you know, and I'm saying to myself, you know, this might be a good week just to give them a little bit of rest, you know. And every time I think of that game, I think I kind of blame myself a little bit, because in my eyes, I took my foot off the gas just a little bit. And, you know, it doesn't take much to turn things around a little bit. And I thought we went into that game maybe not as sharp mentally as we should have been.
And you know what I remember about that game, too, is a lot of Derby fans, they thought that was going to be an easy victory. And the game was in East Haven. It wasn't at Derby. So a lot of them themselves took that night off and didn't go. And they went to go see what they thought would be a better football game. And they were shocked that it was a 21-7 game. So not only do I think like the players and coaches, you know, not that they would ever take East Haven lightly, but they thought it'd be an easy victory. The fans thought that as well. So, I mean, it just goes to show that in the league you guys played in, there were no easy nights.
You know, in hindsight, you know, maybe we let our guard down a little bit that week. But that was the week before Ansonia. So maybe it was a bit of an eye opener too. So maybe it was a good thing. So, you know, it opened our eyes like, all right, we can be beat. So, you know, we're not invincible. So let's regroup and let's refocus and let's get ready for Ansonia coming up next week.
That was kind of your typical trap game, you know, where you're thinking ahead a little bit, and, you know, but, you know, knowing, like I said, knowing who we had to play the next couple of weeks, I always kind of blame myself a little bit for going a little bit easier on the kids that week. But, you know, you got to give credit to East Haven too. And it was, the weather helped a little bit. It was rainy and the field was muddy and things of that nature. But they came to play, and they played their hearts out too. So we were able to get through it and get on that bus. But the ride home was rather unique.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, Rob, let me ask you, is there any stories that you have from that season that you might want to share? Something that kind of stood out to you about that team, or something that, again, was a turning point, anything like that?
Well, to piggyback what Mr. Riccio said earlier, you know, Coach was he was an X's and O's guys, but he was more of a teacher, and he made connections with his players rather than just teaching the game of football. It was more of life lessons that we learned, and I talk about this frequently with my high school classmates and teammates. And, you know, as recently as just about a month or so ago, when Jason Palmieri got into the Hall of Fame, you know, we owe a lot of credit to Coach and his staff for developing not us only as players, but as men and who we are today. We owe a lot of that to Coach DeCenzo and to that program specifically.
Right. And, you know, guys, one of the sad things is we lost a couple members from that team in the last, you know, several years. Ralph Cavallero, Jeff Sullivan. You know, I don't think there's anybody else, but, you know, that's the difficult part too, is, you know, you play with these guys and they become friends, and it was a shame to lose them, but they were also a big part of that team as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, we think of that, you know, the one thing I respect these guys, so much respect, they've stuck together all these years. They still get together. And when they do, you know, they always bring up Rob, you know, they always bring those kids up. You know, they don't forget about them. I remember there was a banquet or something, and they wanted their shirts to be represented there as well, you know. And that's that. You know, early on in that year, we started talking about family and family values, and they became a family. They really did. They became like a brotherhood, and they've stuck together all these years. And unfortunately, you know, Johnny and Roman had a difficult situation. I know a number of the kids went down to see him down in Florida and stuff, which was great. But yeah, it kind of supersedes football, what these guys have.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sure does.
definitely.
We've developed a brotherhood, and we have a group text. And as recently as yesterday, everyone was wishing everybody a happy 35th anniversary. It was December
Yeah.
1st, 1990. So it was 35 years ago yesterday. Yeah. So
Is it hard to believe? Is it hard to believe for both of you? It's been 35 years, because I could still remember things from that season like it was yesterday. I really could.
Yeah, well, it was such a big part of our lives, and to this day, it formed who we are. A lot of us are today, and it created bonds. And we talked about it being a family back then, but that's held true to this day.
Yeah. It is hard to believe that it's 35 years, but in the morning when I get out of bed, I realize it's 35 years. But it was just something special, and these guys have kept it alive.
Yeah, and Rob, I always love that image of you waving that flag on the school bus. I thought that was a great image, and those are the things that make what you guys did so special. Is you guys got to take that all in together. You got to take it in with the coaches, because listen, during the season, sometimes coaches yell, but it's never personal. But that you realize that all the hard work and why they do it is because they really do love their players, and being able to win that championship with you guys meant so much to them and you. So that had to be something that's what makes it all worth it.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, being a lineman, we didn't get on the stat sheet all that much. But that was my crowning moment. It was an impromptu. Somebody tossed a flag to me. I jumped up on the school bus, and people still bring it up to me to this day. So, which I think is pretty cool. And I do have a picture of it. It's not a great picture, but I do have a picture of it. Yeah.
And Rob, you coached several years at Emmett O'Brien, and I know it was baseball, but I'm sure you took some of the lessons you learned from the coaches when you coached at Emmett all those years.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and I developed relationships with those kids. They're no longer kids. I wasn't that much older than it when I got that job. I was maybe, I think I was 24 years old. So, and I'm coaching 18-year-olds. So they weren't that much younger than I was. But to this day, I'm still friends with a lot of those. I call them kids, but they're not kids. They're grown men. I still see them. And I took a lot from what I learned from Coach and from his staff and from my days playing football, and I carried it over onto the baseball field, which we had some success over there, which was nice.
And there's nothing more gratifying than to see people like Rob 35 years later and the impact he has had. I mean, I know he and Chevy are both politicians and on different boards and whatever, and just to see their families. I see Rob in church with his family all the time. It just gives you just a little bit of gratitude that you had a little part to do with that.
Big part,
Right.
Coach. Big part.
So Rob, before we let you go, what would you say to Coach DeCenzo? I mean, do you have anything to say to him? It's 35 years later, but you got to play for him for 3 years, and I know you cherish those. Is there anything you'd want to say to him before you sign off?
Just a big thank you. I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be the father I am, the man I am today, without that program and without your leadership, Coach. So if I had anything I ever want to say to you, it's thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you for giving us a few minutes, and congratulations on 35
Thank
years.
you very much.
That championship will live on forever.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Take care.
So, Coach, we're going to talk about Ansonia now, because that was a big weekend. You had a player who didn't steal the headlines a lot, but boy, what a game he had that day on a Saturday morning at Ryan Field. And of course, I'm talking about Brian Marcuscio. And Coach, it was funny because he kind of he would always go back and forth with Scott Ezzo, but on this game, he had to kind of play the whole game. And you had Scaife and Smith-Tana bringing the plays in and out. And Brian didn't get many passes thrown at that point. I think he had only caught one pass all year. Yeah. But what really impressed me, Coach, it's hard to score one touchdown against a team like Ansonia with the way they coach and the defense they put out there. And the fact that kid, I mean, I think about the 2 long passes that he got open on and ran the pattern so well. Just talk about that game and the game that Brian had that day.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, Brian and Scott used to rotate every play to bring in the plays. I would back then we didn't have the no huddle and all that stuff they have today. I used to give them the play. They used to bring it in to the quarterback, to Joe, and I never looked to see, okay, Brian's in the game. We're not, we're going to throw the ball. I called the play I wanted. It was kind of random as to who was the split end, So up until that point, you're right. Brian was kind of shut out. We hadn't thrown him the ball that much. That particular game, of course, he was going to play pretty much the whole game as split end. And the first one was we were down by the goal line and we ran a play action pass, a little belly pass. And Brian ran a beautiful pattern. He kind of looked like he was going to run a post, and he cut back to the outside, and Joe found him. The next the two long passes, we had called that play earlier in the game, and we threw it to the flat. We ran a post and a flat. And John Oko, who was upstairs with John D., mentioned, he said, "Child, they didn't really pay a lot of attention to the post, So when we had the opportunity, we came back to it. And on the first one, I specifically told Joe, I said, Joe, we're going to run that post and flat. Look for the post. And he kind of pumped the ball to the flat guy, and then he went over the top. It was a beautiful play for a touchdown. And honestly, the second one, do you think you can get away with it twice? I didn't. But you had to try it, and we did. And again, it just broke open. I maybe a little flaw in their secondary. I don't know what they were looking at. But it worked well. It worked well. He got behind the safety, which again doesn't happen too much in Ansonia. Jack Hunt used to always say, "Get deep, take a seat," And but in that particular case, it worked very well. Both of those passes. And Brian ran a great pattern. Joe threw a great. And again, up front, we had great protection. It all kind of came together. And we still had to hang on. That was a crazy game. I every now and then, I get a little nostalgic around Thanksgiving time, and I'll take a look at a game. And a couple of years ago, I looked at that game, and I kind of shook my head. I said, man, for such a great game, there were a lot of turnovers in that game.
Yeah.
Joe Martin intercepts a pass. He's running the ball. He gets tackled. He fumbles. They get it back. The very first play of the game, we pitched the ball to Jason, and he got caught. He got hit in a hurry. We fumbled the ball. They ran in for a touchdown. But there are quite a few turnovers in that game,
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was. And the funny thing was, when Johnny and Roman intercepted the ball late in the game, that looked like you guys were going to put it away. And then they got one more opportunity.
They did.
Thankfully,
I think we
Joey got.
Yeah, we intercepted the ball about our 15-yard line.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you
never quite put Ansonia away until that final whistle.
Yeah, but I thought what was ironic, Coach, was you needed a first down to seal that victory, and Johnny, being the tough kid that he is, and the line doing a great job, again, blocking to the whistle. Yeah. You guys get that first down, so you don't have to even worry about them having one more offensive series, because it's like you said, you give them enough opportunities, eventually they're going to get in there. So
yeah, I think at the end of the game, we ran a couple of plays. We didn't get much, maybe 2 yards, so it was 3rd and 8 or something like that. And, of course, you don't want to throw the ball. We were down on our own 20-yard line or something. You don't want to throw the ball there. God forbid the ball gets tipped, it's intercepted. What a way to lose a game. So we handed the ball off to Johnny, and, it looked like he was going to get 5-6 yards. And then all of a sudden at the end, he just kind of dove out and stretched out and got the other 2 yards, and that gave us the first down and basically sealed the game.
Yeah, and again, that was a game as well where I say the unsung heroes helped out that game. Obviously Brian, but another guy, and I really send my well wishes to him because I know he's going through some tough times, but Paul Allen filled in for Joey when Joey got hurt in that second quarter. Joey it looked like he was not going to come back in that game. And right. Paul Allen did a great job in the secondary of that game, filling in for Joey until Joey could go back in.
Again, that's another prime example of how that team worked together. A great team effort. Joe basically sprained his ankle midway through the second quarter, and we were kind of concerned as to whether he was going to play at all in the second half. And so we had Ben getting ready to play quarterback, but Joe persevered, and he obviously played the rest of the game, but then sat out the next game where Ben took over at quarterback and Paulie played safety. And of course, Ben had 4 touchdown passes that night. It's just the North Haven game. Sully got hurt. He hurt his shoulder. We're fooling around on a Monday, and the linemen were catching passes one-handed, this, that, and the other stuff. And he falls down, hurts his shoulder. He doesn't play, and we get Doug Seibert in there and a couple of guys. And we always were just fortunate enough to have that one other guy ready to play. And by and large, they all did the job.
They really did, and 2 juniors on that team, Coach. Obviously Ben, he was tremendous. He had 10 interceptions as a D-back that year and did a great job filling in for Joe. But 2 other juniors on that team that year that really contributed a lot, especially when Sean Wandell went down, was Joe Ferrigno and John Paque, and they really gave you guys more than I think you ever could have thought they would.
Yeah, when we lost Sean, we lost 2 kids, because Sean played both ways, tight end and defensive end. And so we had Joe filled in as the tight end and did an excellent job. I think he caught a touchdown pass in that Sheehan game we're talking about. And Mike Paque on defense played a banner game. He had to get in the game during the North Haven game when Sean got hurt and did an outstanding job. So you're right. I mean, we were just so fortunate. But that, goes back to Coach DeFlippo, who taught us from day one, you coach all of the kids. We didn't spend, if we're on the field 2.5 hours a day or whatever it was, we didn't spend 2.5 hours a day with our first team. Everybody had a chance to play. When we ran offense, we ran 2 teams. We ran, the first team and the second team. And the same thing when we ran defense, we had the first team perimeter, secondary work, and then the second team secondary work. So, you're coaching all of your kids. So when the time comes, when one of those kids has to step in, he certainly knows what he's doing. Now, some kid, obviously you're going to lose some talent sometime in a position, but they know what they're doing. And to the best of their ability, they're going to do it. And so we had faith in our kids. We had faith in those kids that they would get it done.
Right. And, Coach, you brought him up earlier in the interview, but I want to bring him up again. And that's Scott Ezzo. And listen, he was the hero for both overtime games. I mean, he makes the big catch against North Haven. And the ironic thing, Coach, in the Lyman Hall game, I don't think Scott played much defense that year, but Frank put him into that game and into the overtime game. And listen, that kid was open. If Scott doesn't make that interception, that's a touchdown. And boy, I'll tell you, Lyman Hall, they played Derby like that was their biggest game of the year. They really did.
Yeah, that was one of those games, like I said, we had that great game against Seymour. Well, Lyman Hall, couldn't do anything wrong in this game. I mean, we'd score, they'd score back and forth. There was a couple of plays where we missed one tackle. The kid went for a long touchdown. It was a dogfight. And we scored, I think, on the first or second play of overtime that, we had the ball first. There was a case where we had the ball first. So it was nice that you went in and scored. Now you had to stop them. And again, they threw a couple passes. And then the last pass that Scott intercepted, their receiver was open. He was running across the end zone and Scott was trailing him. And the quarterback threw the ball and Scott was able to undercut it and make the interception, but he had a step on him. There was a chance that was a touchdown, but Scott made a great play.
Yeah, and Coach, I talked about the East Haven game and the Lyman Hall game. I didn't look at Derby played or took them lightly or didn't play well. Lyman Hall just played above their heads that night.
Yeah.
But you guys got that victory. And that's the thing about that team is they knew how to grind out wins.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was senior
they-
night for us. You know, that was our last home game. We were playing Shelton away. So no, the kids they were ready to play the game, but Lyman Hall was also ready to play the game, and they played well. Lyman, it's funny, you know, every team has a team they want to beat. Lyman Hall always had they called it Derby Week, you know, and for some reason we were the team that they wanted to knock off, you know, and they came down and they Philatosian, his crew, and they were well prepared and they played a great game, and we were fortunate, you know, to come out ahead.
Yeah, but you know, again, another example of the fight this team had. And coach, you know, you find out, I think it was the junior semi-formal that night, and you're chaperoning that dance, and you find out Seymour loses to Amity. So you guys wrap up the Housatonic League. So you get to celebrate with them at the dance and things like that. But let me ask you, even though you had that Hoosie wrapped up, I have to believe that Shelton game still made you nervous, correct?
Always. You know, as we all know, I had trouble with Shelton. I really did. And that's a credit to Bob and his staff and his kids. Shelton, you know, many times we always felt we were undermanned when we went to play Shelton. You know, our team this year, you know, one thing we didn't talk about, we were not a big team. This was not a big, you know, Doug Seibart, Keith Robinson. We had a couple of kids, but by and large, you know, our kids were very average high school weight. And when you go to play Shelton, you know, the weather, the field, size, we just always seem to have a little bit of trouble getting over the hump with them. So going into that game, I was a nervous wreck.
Yeah, and coach, you know, you won 14-3, and I know a lot of people say it's a close game, but I never felt like in that game you guys were in serious trouble. I felt like the defense, they were doing a great job against Shelton, especially the containment. They did a great job with that. And again, Jason and John had big games. John had a big run, and Jason, I think, had about 160 yards that game. Mike Smith-Tana, we talked about, he caught a big touchdown pass. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, that was like, to me, listen, the state title game you want to win, but you want to win your Hoosie, which you guys did, but you beat everybody that year in the Hoosie. And that was the completion of what was a fantastic, but, you know, it was a grind of a season.
Oh, it was a difficult year. I mean, we look back at it, you know, as a dream season and, you know, all the glory that comes with it. But it was a tough year. I mean, week after week, look at our scores. Ironically, the big score was Seymour. Other than that, you know, we didn't talk too much about Cheshire, 28-21. You know, they were right there with us. I mean, Lyman Hall overtime. North Haven overtime. You know, it wasn't like we were blowing people out.
Yeah.
You know, it was always a battle. And part of that, I think, had to do with the fact that we were undersized. We were small. People could lean on us a little bit, you know, and it was like our skill kids had to take over here and there in the course of a game, whether it was an interception or a pass play or whatever it might have been, to get us over the top. But it was you know, Shelton, again, yes, we kind of dominated the game, but they're within striking distance. We've seen it before. You know, one bad play, one little tip pass or whatever, they take it back for a touchdown, and all of a sudden, you know, so that's why until that final whistle blows, you're never quite sure.
Yeah, most definitely. And coach, the state title game, and what I really felt, I'll start with Housatonic, is they had great coaching. And the reason I say this, they had a good game plan in the first half. Talent took over in the end, but I really felt like they had some good skilled positions. That Marshall kid was a good player. Yep. And their coaching staff was tremendous because they really came out, you know, they did a great job on their first couple offensive series, but your kids held through. It was only 7-0 at the half, but it was like the second half, destiny was meant for this team, and they just took over in the second half.
I mean, the first half, you know, you're right. The first series, I'm sure the people in the stands get a little worried. They were driving the ball on us. And then I think Keith Robin made a big play to turn the ball over on 4th down. Then we got the ball back. And again, we kind of dominated after that, but we didn't put the ball in the end zone. You know, you got to score. And we didn't, except for the one time. So we had 7-0. But I wasn't, a lot of people said to me, what the hell did you say to him at halftime? I didn't say much. I really didn't.
You were quiet.
I really didn't. I said, guys, we're okay. We're going to get this done. We just got to fix a few little things. And honestly, John D., Oak, both looked at me and said, John, we got 2 of the best backs in the state. Give them the ball.
Yeah.
Sometimes you outcoach yourself a little bit too, because we a couple of times we threw passes that were incomplete and things and it's just keep feeding them the ball, and sure enough, I agree. Their coaches were very good. I give them all the credit in the world. They tried that onside kick in the second half, and ironically, we were offside.
Yeah, so they got another crack.
We were offside, so they got to kick a second time. I never thought they would onside kick it again, but they did.
And it was funny. I was going to bring that up because when I talk about guys that maybe didn't always see the field the entire game, George Garland, he gets a big, he recovers the kick. Rich Scaife gets a touchdown in that game. So everybody on that team, and underclassmen as well, because they have to work hard in practice, everybody on that team contributed that year.
Yeah, I mean, George, God bless him, he recovered the onside kick, and I think 2 or 3 plays later, Jason scored, and then it was like the dam burst. We scored 3 touchdowns, I think, in the third quarter. And it was off to the races. But no, in fairness to Housatonic, they played a great first half. In the second half, I think our skilled kids just kind of overwhelmed them a little bit. But part of that was just in that particular field position. We got the ball like on the 48-yard line or something, and Jason popped a couple of long runs. I think the first play was like a 40-yard run or something like that. And, we got down there and scored. And then after that, it was all downhill for them,
And Coach, you heard Rob talk about what you meant to him. It had to be a wonderful feeling. Maybe at the time you're so focused on the game, you're not thinking about it as much in the game. But when you got to take it all in, it had to be a great feeling when they poured the water on you like they did. Dominic Bawano did a great job of decoying it. He's got his arm around you. He made sure you couldn't see what was going on. But that, even though it's cold out and the water is cold or the Gatorade's cold, it had to be a tremendous feeling because you know what? Like anything else, if your players don't respect you, whether you win or not, they're not going to do things like that. And the fact that they did, it shows that they appreciated you and your coaching staff.
No, I agree. And then, we had just a great relationship with these kids and really most of our teams, we just had that's was our philosophy coming out of Coach Lou. We weren't just here to coach football. You wanted to see these kids mature, get a good education, go on to college, establish themselves in a community, get married, have kids, etc. And you wanted that for them. And I think along the way, we made sure we got to know the kids. We made sure we got to help them if they needed help. And we had kids, unfortunately, sometimes, domestically, they did need some help, and we knew that. And we made sure that we were there for them. And I think they knew that if they needed anything from us, we would be there. There's you mentioned Paulie Allen. There's a funny story with Paulie Allen. One summer night before the season started, July, whatever, I'm in bed, I'm sleeping. It's 2:00 in the morning or something. The phone rings. And I said, oh my God. And it's Mr. DeCenzo, Coach DeCenzo. I said, yes. This is the Walcott Police. I said, oh my God. Now what? He said, well, we have a little situation here. I said, what's that? Do you have a player on your team named Paul Allen? I said, yeah. And Paul was a great kid. Paul never got in any trouble. I said, yeah. He said, well, he's stranded up here. I said, where? Walcott. Mike, I didn't even know where Walcott was.
Yeah,
said,
and there's no
okay.
GPSs. Yeah.
I said, okay, yeah. I said, let me get this straight. He asked you to call me? I said, yeah. He said, are you his coach? I said, yeah. He said, well, he needs a ride home. I said, okay. Now, we didn't have, Waze and all these computer programs. I said, give me directions. So I got to go pick up one of the kids. Off I go, bring him home. Paulie. First, I said to the cop, did he do anything wrong? And the guy said, no, he didn't. He's just stranded. I said, okay. Off I go to Walcott. God knows where that is. And I bring Paulie home. I said, Paul, he looked at me once. I said, Paul, don't talk. It's 2:30 in the morning. Don't talk. I'm going to drop you off at your house, and you're going to go in the house. Don't talk. To this day, some of the other kids want to say, you actually called the coach? But he did.
And Coach, looking back on that, it's a story that it probably makes you feel good too, that like
It
he
does.
didn't know who to call and he called you as his coach, because I'll tell you right now, I don't think anybody would be brave enough to call their coach at that time of the night. Now, maybe if it's 6 o'clock at night, that's one thing, but 2:30 in the morning,
He
that's.
did. And I still laugh about it. 2:30 in the morning, I'm driving up to Walcott.
And I bet, Coach, whenever you see Derby's playing Wolcott, and I know you came back and coached with Coach French, and you guys are playing Wolcott, it's got to make you think of that story every time. It does.
Every time I see Paulie's picture or whatever, just for one of the things that pops into your head, that these are some of the things you do as a high school coach that people don't realize, get for the Ansonia game. That this particular year, there was a lot of tension, to say the least, around town. And that week, the Ansonia coaches and I made sure we frequented Dutchess and McDonald's quite often before the week before the game to make sure there were no problems.
Right. And Coach, everything went right that season. And the thing is, it bothered me that the New Haven Register all year, they seem not to give you guys enough respect. And then you guys are 10-0, and St. Joe's gets beat by West Haven on Thanksgiving. Naugatuck gets beat by Ansonia. You automatically assume Derby's going to be number one. And they give it to Danbury, who was 8-0-2 with, the 2 ties. And, I have respect for Coach Morrell, great coach, and did a great job at Danbury. But I couldn't understand how they could do that to Derby. But then that night, Greenwich beats Danbury, and you guys get number one. I mean, just everything, it looked like, okay, if there was one damper, it was going to be you weren't going to get number one. And then that moment happens. Yeah. I mean, greatest season of your life. I know it was the toughest one, but it was the greatest one as well.
It's funny because approaching that, like I said, we weren't thinking about being number one. We just, we got to beat Shelton. We got to, and one at a time, the people ahead of us were getting knocked off, And then that last night, of course, and even then, even at the end, Mike, we didn't. I think we had 7 votes for number one, but St. Joe still got 4. I mean, we outpointed them. But somebody told me like 10 points or something like that to be number one. I think we deserved it. I mean, I know that, the press, they were asking me after the game and all that stuff. And I was trying to be, polite, but at the same time, I was trying to defend the kids. I said, listen, we're the only team. We went on the field 11 times. We haven't lost, and I think that had a lot to do with it. In the end, I think four teams went into the playoffs undefeated, and we were the only team to come out undefeated. Yeah. So I don't think there should have been any confusion as to who was number one, but I agree with you to a certain degree. You know, I think sometimes the politics of all of that gets a little bit crazy. You know, I remember one of our local writers talking to me afterwards, and he said that he was talking to a few writers from a different part of the state who basically told him, well, they're going to vote for their team no matter what. You know, so those things are a little difficult to deal with sometimes. As all Hoosie, all state, all of that stuff. You know, that was the part of coaching I hated. You know,
Well, the thing is,
politics.
Coach, the thing is, I don't know how you could have a number one team in the state and not have one kid on the all-state team for the register. I thought that was a total injustice.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, again, that's why I never put a lot of stock into those type of teams because there is a biasness there.
No, there is. And, you know, leagues vote in blocks. I mean, there's a lot of crazy things that goes on. You know, it's unfortunate, but it happens. You know, we all know that. And unfortunately, it is a little political. But I think in the end, you know, our kids got their due justice. I mean, they, you know, being number one in the state and carrying that with them all these years, you know. And, you know, we always tried to play down, you know, the individual awards. You know, and most of our kids were good. You know, they accepted it in the name of their team, you know, that type of thing. But it's that part of coaching is tough. It really is.
Yeah. And Coach, you know, I look at just some of the, you know, little accolades that some of the players got. Doug Seibart, who hadn't started till this year, he makes All Valley, does a great job for you guys. Pat McMahon was very underrated that year as well. Yep. And you got to see all these guys get recognized for the hard work they put in. And as a coach who's coached these kids, and, you know, you want them to do well for the team, but seeing them do well individually and getting recognized like that, it makes you and the coaches feel good for them.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, the Scholar Athlete Awards and things of that nature, you know, but, you know, you certainly want the kids to get rewarded for their hard work and to promote them down the line. You know, I mean, it helps a little bit with recruiting and things of that nature if the kids want to go on and play ball in college. But unfortunately, you know, there is a lot of politicking that goes on there. Yeah,
definitely. Well, Coach, this was a lot of fun. Congratulations on the 35th anniversary. That's
scary.
Remarkable. You know, really is. But it was a great team, one that Derby fans will never forget. And, you know, when John D gets a little better, I'll have him come on one of these interviews. I know he'll be a lot of fun, but really appreciate it. And thank you for giving me some time again, as always.
Thank you, Michael. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Of course, that's the one and only Charlie DeCenzo. This was Ground Chuck, Charlie's Coaching Corner. I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.
Good night.